This podcast is sponsored by Bigger Brains, online training that won't bore you to tears. Expand the minds of your workforce at getbiggerbrains.com.
Welcome to Permission to Speak, the video blog and podcast that loiters at the intersection of leaders who want their people to speak up, technology that facilitates connections, and results that serve our higher purpose. Now, here's your host, Kelly Vandever.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. This is Kelly Vandever, and my two special guests today are Hollie Delaney and Christa Foley, both from Zappos. Back in 2010, the CEO of Zappos, Tony Hsieh, shared the organization's story in his book, Delivering Happiness. Zappos is famous for having an amazing culture even before the book came out, and in 2013, they also became famous for implementing Holacracy, also known as getting rid of traditional management positions. And as if all of that isn't fascinating enough, Zappos also created a group called Zappos Insights that leads classes to teach other companies how they too can deliver wow in their business, culture, and people practices. Hollie Delaney heads up all things people and HR related at Zappos. Christa Foley heads up Zappos Insights as well as works on people, culture, and brand. Both ladies have worked at Zappos over 10 years and have agreed to share their insights related to Holacracy, employee engagement, and how they've helped other organizations learn from Zappos' successes. So welcome, Hollie and Christa, to the podcast.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, as you know, we start out our interview with a couple of quirky questions to get to know our interviewees a little better, so I'll ask both of you the same question. And the first question is, tell us your favorite guilty pleasure television show.
Okay, so this is Christa. I have two, but the go-to is usually Dancing with the Stars. And I don't know, I just love it. I like watching people do something I really suck at. So it's kind of fun to watch. That's my first choice.
Very cool.
This is Hollie. I like watching TV, and I watch a lot of TV shows. But I think my favorite right now is Game of Thrones. I really like Game of Thrones, and I really like Jon Snow. So it really keeps things interesting.
Well, those are quite different television shows you guys have preferences for.
I had thought Hollie and I might say the same thing, which neither of us picked it, but we both did really binge watch Westworld.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've heard of that, but we're anxiously awaiting
the next season.
It's about artificial intelligence and robots, and it's, I think, the remake of a movie from the 70s by Michael Crichton.
Yep.
But it's good stuff if you or your folks listening haven't watched it.
So yes. That was Westworld?
Yep.
Yes.
I haven't heard. Okay, I'll have to check that out because I love to watch too much TV too. All right, very cool. All right, so the second quirky question is, tell us something surprising about yourself that most people don't know.
You want to take this, Hollie? Or not?
Sure, I'll go first this time. This is Hollie. So I think people close to me know this, but most people overall don't know that after I graduated from college, I decided to move to Hawaii, move all my stuff to Hawaii, and train dolphins because I thought that would be fun.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
I went and I did it, and it wasn't as fun as I thought it would be, but it was definitely an experience.
That is so cool. Well, and now Hollie's wishing she had gone first, right?
Yeah.
No,
that was Hollie.
This was Hollie.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Christa, I knew I was going to get that.
Yeah. No, I can't top that. But we play a game here a lot at Zappos called Two Truths and One Lie.
Yeah.
And this is always what people think is my lie, but it's actually true. Which is I grew up in the Northeast, and I played field hockey, and I played in the Junior Olympics for field hockey.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, you both
are
so
dolphins,
interesting.
But there you go.
That is very cool. That is very cool. Well, and so I was going to say, Holly, about the dolphins. I mean, if you hadn't done that, you would have always wondered. So at least you, even if it didn't turn out the way you liked it, that it was your passion, you tried it. That's really cool.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
And Junior Olympics, that's, wow. That's quite an accomplishment right there.
I mean, it's not really a big deal, but it was a big deal at the time for me.
It's a huge deal. How many people can say that? I can't say. Very cool. Very cool.
Olympics in the title.
It's very cool. All right. So now for kind of our transitional question, what's your story? I'll ask you each to tell me individually. What happened in your life that got you to a place where you cared about employees having a voice to speak up?
Sure. I'll go first. So before working at Zappos, I worked in the staffing industry for a lot of years, and I just kind of fell into it. And this is kind of mentioned a little bit in a section of Tony Hsieh's book, Delivering Happiness, but I really loved recruiting, and I loved the idea of recruiting when I worked in staffing. And I guess I'll also say that the staffing industry is a great foundation about just business in general. And teaching the basic skills of recruiting. But I think where I recognized that people didn't have a voice was unfortunately not uncommonly also in that industry, because the staffing industry and the kind of temp and direct placement business is all about the numbers. And because you're not directly connected to a client, typically where you're trying to place a temporary employee or a full-time employee, the pressure is really just how many people can you place in a job. And so there was many a time when I would talk to someone I'd placed at a job who would let me know after the fact that either they didn't have a great culture, or their manager wasn't really nice to them, or people didn't treat them well. And unfortunately, I won't say it all the time, but many times, if I would try to discuss that with the client, it was really met with resistance. And I think even before discovering Zappos, which is focusing on culture and people and them having a voice is really important. I think that's when I started to realize, well, this is really kind of a crappy way to live if, you go to a job and you have no recourse for being treated just like a decent person should be. So that was one of the things that really drew me to Zappos. But I think that was kind of the line in the sand for me, and the reason why when there was an opening at Zappos, I really wanted to make a shift, because I didn't just want to treat people kind of as numbers and have it all be about the dollars. Of course, businesses have to be profitable and be successful, but there absolutely can be a balance between both. And at least at Zappos, we found that you'll be more successful if you do treat your people right and have them be fully engaged and have a voice in your business.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and this is Holly. So, when I interviewed for Zappos, I was pretty disgruntled in the business world overall. So I fell into HR at one of the jobs I got out of college. I became a concierge for a casino in Lake Tahoe, and I decided I was going to try to be I was going to try for the management trainee program. I didn't get that position, but in the panel interview I was on, the VP of HR was there, and so she liked me and she gave me a job in HR. And that's kind of how I fell into HR. Didn't really know what it meant or what it was about at the time. And so in HR, there was a lot of things that happened that I noticed didn't make sense to me necessarily. All these rules that didn't make sense to me, and why things had to happen those ways, and how HR always seemed to be a scary place for people, when I thought it should be the place that people would want to go and be supported and those type of things. So one of my goals from the beginning when I started my career in HR was to be able to change the perception of HR. And then I started working in the HR industry and, through different jobs, and I got very disgruntled with business overall because of the way employees were treated. Not having a voice, having executives on a top floor locked away where nobody could talk to them. You had to have special access and all of those type of things, and it was just stuff that didn't feel right to me or fit into with what I wanted to be a part of. And I remember I applied for the job at Zappos, and at the time not really knowing what Zappos was or anything else. I just remember they had cool ads on the radio for jobs. And so they had an HR job available, so I applied for it. And I came in interviewing thinking it's just going to be another place. And when I took the tour and when I talked to people and everything else, what I saw was so amazing to me because it felt, there was such a family feel and there was such a feeling that you could be yourself at this place, and that nobody was locked in a tower. The fact that you didn't know who Tony Hsieh was unless you knew Tony Hsieh, was amazing to me. Like the fact that you couldn't point out the CEO I was like, this is a cool environment. And so I really, really wanted to be a part of it. But I remember when I interviewed here, I started crying in my interview because Tony asked me a question about my son, and I got emotional and I cried. And I left and I was like, I totally blew this. They're not going to hire me. I cried in front of the CEO and the COO of the company. There's no way they're giving me this job. And then the next day they called and offered me the job. And that just solidified for me that this place was special and that it really encouraged people to be themselves. And when people can come and bring their whole selves to work and be themselves, they can have a voice and they can feel comfortable in bringing their ideas forward. And those things are so important to the success of a company, not only the success of the company, but for people to be happy and live a happy and successful life, because work is such a big part of our lives.
Okay, so I'm just sitting here with my mouth open. I love these stories. I mean, after reading the book, I was like, that sounds like a wonderful place to work. I wish I lived in Vegas. So it really is all that for the folks that work there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said in your intro, both Hollie and I have been here over 10 years, and I can't imagine working somewhere else. And that's definitely something we try to help spread the message about through Zappos Insights. It's definitely not to tell other companies they should be Zappos or be like us or have our culture or have our core values, because every company has its own culture and core values that's appropriate for them. But it's just kind of the basic principles of hire the right people, immerse them into whatever your culture is, treat them like adults, and then get out of their way and let them do their jobs. And it's really as simple as that. And I've heard Hollie tell her story that she just shared before, and it's I know sometimes people don't believe us, but it's just treat people like you want to be treated as a person.
It seems like such common sense, but
yeah, it's not rocket science.
Yeah,
it just seems not super intuitive sometimes in the business world. So.
Right. I was just writing an article about that feeling that sometimes, or like I got, I guess, when I was early in my management career, that I felt like I wanted to treat people like people, but this is business, and so you kind of suppress some of those things about what you want to do because, well, it's business and we're supposed to worry about the shareholder value and blah blah blah. But you can do both, like you said. There's a balance that you can have there, and still have a successful business and treat people like humans.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned the core values there at Zappos. So how does that play out day to day? How does that impact the people and the success of the business?
So, well, from the core value standpoint, kind of like I mentioned, for us it really starts with hiring people that fit into your culture. For us, our culture is based in each of our 10 core values. And so in our interviewing process, we're really looking to make sure that on both sides, that the person coming on board resonates with the values we hold at Zappos, and then conversely for them, that they share the same values personally, because it has to be both ways or it's not going to be a genuine fit and it's not going to be super successful. So we have a pretty slow recruiting process because we want to make sure we bring on kind of the best match possible, and everyone that we hire goes through a culture core value assessment, which is conducted by someone in recruiting, so it's independent of the hiring manager or lead link in our Holacracy world, and the hiring team, and recruiting gets the final say on whether or not we move forward with the person. So even if the VP of marketing is desperate to fill this digital marketing role that they have open. If the recruiter sees any red flags from a core value fit or alignment standpoint, we won't move forward. And it's been really important, and we've done, I think, a good job of really committing to that, because if you start off on day one with misalignment in values and fit, you're going to have future problems. And then from there, everybody that we hire goes through a 5-week onboarding new hire training program. And almost half of that is dedicated to kind of cultural and core value immersion into the company. So it's really deep diving into each of the core values. What do we mean by them? What are the expectations that we have from employees in terms of upholding them and living them? How no matter what job you are hired into, it's important for you to reflect the values in your interactions with everyone that you come into contact with and within the scope of your work. Probably the other 45% of that class is really teaching people how to do the frontline job, one of the most important jobs at Zappos, which is talking to our customers. So everyone we hire also will spend about 40 hours of time talking to our customers and learning how to do that job, because at the heart of who we are is customer service and delivering a wow service experience. We want everyone to really get that before they move into whatever area they signed up for. And then we've also recently added some specific Holacracy training, just because it's a unique system that's not traditional in the corporate world, and we want to give people a good foundation before they hit their teams and their circles and start running. So all of that to say that it's really setting the right foundation and basis for people in that first month and a half before they hit the floor.
Yeah, I would just add to that, in companies I've worked for before Zappos and Zappos, all of that really looking for the right fit, making sure people are living the same values, really talking about it, have it part of the immersion courses and all of those things. It really is a part of the day-to-day life every day that you live and breathe here. So, it's very much different than other companies I've worked at where it was just a plaque on a wall, that says, here's our mission, here's our core values, here's our vision type thing. It doesn't need to be really listed anywhere, because it's so much a part of everything we do every single day, regardless of if you're in a class learning about it or you're in your job doing your job every day. It's just embedded in everything that we do, that it's just really important that people coming in understand that and that they're ready for that to be a part of their lives.
Yeah, and I have just a quick example from the HR space, since obviously that's where Holly and I have spent a lot of our time. But just to give an example of how that translates into your actual work, this is a personal favorite of mine, because another guilty pleasure is I enjoyed the Twilight books. If anyone's familiar with those back in the day. But we had a benefits manager at the time that H1N1 was sort of in the news and a big scare across the country. And we've offered flu shots forever, but there was also a shot for H1N1. And in a typical company, a company might decide that's a good benefit to offer your employees. Will sign up here to come get your shot on these days. And the benefits manager, when she emailed the company, I think her subject was, how do you know if you have the flu, you just have a cold, or you have H1, or you're a vampire. And her whole, she still conveyed, the information about where to come and how to sign up for the shot and what you needed to know about it, but she did it with a whole Twilight spin, are you flushed and sparkling? That might mean you're a vampire. And that's part of our, building connections with people. That's part of being fun and a little weird. And so that's a really small, tiny, might seem like a silly example, but that's just what you're meant to do in your work. Involve and incorporate all of our values into what your job is.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you're doing the immersion piece in the onboarding process, are you giving examples like that? Are you encouraging people to demonstrate it somehow, like in role plays, or what's the immersion piece of that look like?
So the new hire training team actually invites people from across the company. And so what happens is you get the new hire class will have, people from marketing and people from legal and, people from various levels and positions across the company, and they'll come in and present a particular core value. And it's not something that they're told they have to do. It's just kind of an open invitation across the company for people to want to present a particular value that they're super passionate about or feel like they have a good story around. And so it's different in each class because different people will come present a particular core value. But yeah, I could go in and present fun and a little weird and give that example if you're the benefits manager could have. So yeah, we definitely do really talk through each of the values and then give different examples that we either personally were involved with or stories that we've heard of other people doing things to really highlight a particular value. And I think that's impactful because it's people across the company instead of, potentially a new hire feeling like, this is just the trainers and they're just telling me stuff. That, it's kind of a personalized sharing.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things, at least in my personal experience when I interviewed with the company and went through the training, is the hiring slowly process around all of this and the number of people that I met in my interviews and the fact that everybody I met had examples of what the environment was like and what the core values were all about and why they enjoyed this work environment and everything else. One of the questions I asked everybody, I think I interviewed with like 14 people, and one of the questions I asked everybody in that is like, why are you so happy? Because everybody I met with was like really happy, like unusually happy, especially me being disgruntled coming in for the interview. And I was like, why are you guys so happy? And they all had the same answer, but with all different examples. And then when I went through the training class, it was the same thing. They would come in and they all had their own personal examples of how this company and this environment had changed, their lives and the different things that they do. And you could see it exuded in each person. And, as a new hire back then when I started, and it still exists today, like just seeing that and being a part of that, you really start to understand and get what it's all about.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I do want to shift gears a little bit. You mentioned Holacracy was part of the training, since that is a very different, most of us haven't worked in that kind of an environment. So can you tell us a little bit about what that really looks like? Maybe give us an example of something we're familiar with, like the call center. What did it look like before Holacracy, and what does it look like since? Can you help enlighten us there?
This Holly, I think that's a hard question to answer, just because that it doesn't look much different. There's a lot. I mean, the work's still there and the work still gets done. It's how authority is distributed amongst employees and how they're able to process what we call tensions, which is just the gaps that they see in the organization, and how they can bring those to light. So, like the day-to-day work, if I come in to do my job, I'm doing the same job that I did yesterday or before we started this. That piece doesn't necessarily change. But what it does is it gives me more clarity in the process to know exactly what I'm accountable for, what I have authority around. And then it also gives me a place to process those things that I see with clarity. Like if I have an issue with HR in recruiting, I can go to a portal, I can go and look in GlassFrog, and I can say, okay, Christa, I'm going to go to Christa for that because she holds these accountabilities and this authority. So I have a guide, and then I have a pathway to process those different things that I'm seeing and be heard. Whereas, in traditional orgs, it was a lot of, you have to follow the right procedure. You have to talk to your boss, to talk to your boss's boss, to get to this person, to that person. And it takes away a lot of that stuff and just gives me the ability as an employee to have my voice heard around the different things that I see could help the organization. It also gives me a little more freedom around what I want to do personally within my career versus waiting for my manager to tell me I'm promoted or to tell me, this is what I have to do to get this job. It gives me more freedom to figure out what are the roles I want and have the ability to, bring those to the forefront and see if it's something that the company needs.
Yeah, and this is Chris. I would add, it's also very purpose-focused. Mm-hmm. So there is still a hierarchy, which I think gets misunderstood quite a bit when media kind of reports on what Holacracy is. There is still a hierarchy. It's just a hierarchy of work and roles and accountabilities, like Holly just mentioned. But it's structured by circles. So each circle rolls up to and includes the kind of general company circle, which is the top of the company. And so the intent is, in addition to thinking about your area of authority and your accountabilities, is are you upholding the purpose of your role, which there then trends up to your circle, and any circles above you up to the company purpose, which for Zappos is to live and deliver wow. And so we've always had a focus on purpose with our core values and the focus on delivering happiness and wow experiences. But this just sort of codifies it a bit and makes it really front and center in your mind when you're looking at your work. So that's one of the things I think we really like about it. The other thing I would add, too, is, again, just to sort of maybe combat a misunderstanding about Holacracy, is that one of the biggest reasons we made this shift is, when Holly and I started, we had a couple hundred people, right? And now we have over 1,500 people at the company, and we've certainly felt it as the company's gotten bigger. And I think if you asked anyone who's been here a while at Zappos, the bigger a company gets, the harder it is to stay as connected to the front line and your customer as you used to be. And so when Holly mentioned this ability for people to process tensions, which again could be a new idea, or actually, hey, there is a problem with this shipping thing, or whatever it might be, this allows for a much faster path for those tensions to be processed. And that was one of the biggest drivers for why we wanted to do this. When you look at companies that scale really fast, and in general, as companies get bigger, they start to stagnate and slow down. And so this was a way for us to stay true to who we are, which was providing an excellent customer service experience to people. And for us, that means both external customers that shop with us, but also our internal employees who are our customers and our shareholders. And, Amazon's our parent company when we were acquired by Amazon. But all of that is to just keep us focused and keep us as nimble as we can be on what really matters at the organization. And I think that's one of the greatest values of Holacracy that I think gets missed when people sort of get really focused on how the structure works, because it's not really even about that. Like Holly said, the day-to-day, like if you walked through our offices, there'd be no evident like, oh, this is all different. Like, it's, you know what I mean? It's still getting the work done and focusing on our values and our purpose.
Yeah, and I think a good example of that, of what Christa just talked about, is we do holiday helper time on the phone. So everybody in the company answers customer calls during the holidays. And so when I answered customer calls last year and this year, some things came up that happened during my phone calls when I was helping customers that I thought that shouldn't happen. Like, we should be able to find a better solution for this or a better solution for that. And so I had an easy way to process that. Like, I went to a meeting. I said, this is stuff that happened when I was on the phone calls, and I didn't realize this happened. Why are we doing this? Can we do this, that? And it actually changed some of the things for the better for the different things that we were doing with shipping and some other stuff that was happening. And so it was, and before it was like I would email whoever the manager was of that area, and they might have gotten, 150 emails, and that might have gotten looked at and might have not gotten looked at, and it was of no fault of anybody ignoring anything. It was just the process wasn't efficient to really take in that information. And this process helps people take in information and do something about it more quickly, so it can scale faster and you can see results more quickly.
So you mentioned going to a meeting, and a moment ago you mentioned something about glass frog. I think that's what you called it. So
Sure.
So can you explain what was this meeting and what's Glass Frog and how that?
Sure. So Glass Frog is the portal that we go to that keeps all of the information. So all the roles that somebody holds and all the accountabilities, the purpose of that role, the accountabilities, what the circles are. It kind of holds the whole structure. It's just the software that holds the whole structure of our organization and who's doing what, basically, is what Glass Frog is. And then, the meetings within Holacracy, there's two different types of meetings. You have what we call a tactical meeting and a governance meeting. A tactical meeting are meetings where you can go and it's much more open. You just talk about different things that are going on, different work that's happening. You can ask questions of each other that are working in that circle. It's a free-flowing meeting to talk about the operational stuff that's happening within your circle. And then the governance meetings are a little more formal, and they actually, it's where you present proposals that structure how you do work within the business. So that's where you propose new roles if you had them, or you would propose different accountabilities on different roles if you saw that there was a gap someplace. And to make it clear that, like, if I saw a gap someplace where Christa was a role that Christa held, I would add an accountability to that role so she would know that I'm expecting that role would handle this piece of work. So those are the different meetings. So in that example, I was at, I believe it was the GCC meeting, and we were in a tactical meeting, and so I just put up my agenda item during that meeting and explained what I experienced while I was doing Holiday Helper, and from there it was quick next actions, and things were solved like very quickly and efficiently.
Okay, very cool. Thank you for going into that detail. So, so what do you think about the experiences that you've had, either just at Zappos in general, or maybe as you've evolved in Holacracy? What are some lessons that managers and traditional kind of management type roles, what can they learn from Holacracy? They maybe don't want to work themselves out of a job, but maybe there's something they can learn from that. What would your advice be there?
For me, I struggled when we went to Holacracy on figuring out, at the time I was the director of human resources, and I struggled with what my job was going to be when the system rolled out, not really understanding all of the pieces. And, I had this job to be responsible for all of this stuff, but now if everybody's responsible for their own pieces, what does that mean for me? Uh-huh. And as I went through the process of this, one of the big things that I learned is people were always responsible for those things. It was never me. People were always responsible for those things. They were looking to me for help when they needed advice and different things like that. And what became very clear as I went down this road is I had specific roles, that I had things I was responsible for, but that people were picking me to help them with the different areas of different advice that they need. And that was much more fulfilling as in my job and as a person than it was like, you have to come to me because I was the quote-unquote director.
Gotcha.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it started to create a whole different environment, and it created a different feeling for me in my job and the things that I could provide to the organization. And I don't think you need something like Holacracy to do that. I would say as you're in those positions, like, really look and understand what, people are responsible for their day-to-day work, regardless of the structure you're in, and, let them be responsible, expect them to be responsible, and be there as a support and guidance to help them along versus trying to dictate how they do those things.
Yeah, and I guess I would concur for sure with that, and just mention too that I know the common thing people think about if they learn about Holacracy is that there's no managers, and that's true. There is no manager title. There are lead links that head up strategy and things like strategy and resource allocation and role selection of who's going to fill a particular role and a few other things in circles. So there is the skills of leadership are still very important, and they're important in any organization, holacratic or self-organized or not. But I think one of the things that I've learned through this process, to echo what Hollie said, is I think it's easy in a manager role to get a little bit trapped into like this hero save the day kind of situation, which you may have some employees who need extra hand-holding and who need pretty detailed guidance on whatever it might be, a project or a challenge that comes up. But you also certainly have a lot of employees who don't need that. And so to kind of get out of their way and let them, as long as, I think this is uber important, that their expectations, which for us is an accountability for their work, that if those are clear and clearly communicated, people can energize and get their work done however they best can do it, as long as they're finishing the work and meeting their purpose. And so it doesn't have to be your way or the way you think it should be done. And so it's really kind of basic like leadership skills, like understanding what employees need what from you and how to best guide them. And so I think as we continue down our journey into self-organization, we're finding it's really, really important to make sure people have the right more soft skills to be both the lead links and employees in non-lead link roles, to understand and be self-aware of like where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are, and to build confidence and to go forward and try new things and know that mistakes are okay, and you just need to learn from them if they happen. So it's been really interesting. It was frankly a really tough transition initially, I think, because none of it was new and none of us knew what it was going to be. And I think we had a lot of the same misperceptions that I think most of the media has about holacracy. But really, when you get down to it, it kind of goes back to that common sense thing. So it's been an interesting ride, and it's been super exciting. And I think we've sort of turned a corner away from like getting kind of caught up in what we thought it was, and just realizing what it actually is not like this crazy, unheard of thing. It just requires a focus maybe on different areas. That's what I would say.
Very cool. Well, that's probably a great segue to talk about Zappos Insights and what you've been able to do and have an impact beyond Zappos. So what have you seen as other organizations are coming to like your Culture Camp or your People Academy? What are some of the things that they're taking away from that are helping them and their organizations?
So what's interesting is, the purpose, because we've talked about purpose a lot, the purpose for Zappos Insights is to inspire organizations to make work better and more fulfilling. And so Zappos Insights started, I think it was 2008. I wasn't...
Can you say that purpose again? That was lovely. I want to hear it again.
Sure. It's inspire organizations to make work better and more fulfilling.
So nice. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. And Insights has been around, I think, since 2008. I was in overseeing recruiting at the time, so I wasn't part of the initial 3-4 years of the company. So it's been around pre-holacracy and pre-self-organization. And the whole intent of that group, and it sort of grew organically just because I know Hollie can attest to, Zappos got a lot of attention from a people and culture and customer service standpoint. And so lots of peers would reach out or execs at other companies and want to, get their real down low on, okay, what are you guys doing over there? And what is this culture stuff? And why does it matter? And so Insights was really formed to just try to, streamline and field those types of inquiries coming in. And then it really, in alignment with the company, Zappos company purpose of living and delivering wow, our hope in Insights is just that we can help people think about business in a different way. It's finding that balance of hiring and engaging and treating your people right, and then how that translates on the business side. If your employees are happier, especially, well, I think at any company, but especially in a company where customer service is one of the biggest components, they're going to be do a better job for you in whatever role they're in, and certainly when they're talking to your customers or interacting with your customers. So we actually don't do a ton of training in Insights right now on self-organization and holacracy. So we do have some customers who come in and are interested in that. But really, I mean, we kind of get the gamut of companies who are just starting to think about culture, who are just starting to think about maybe developing values. And so we'll help guide people through that process, and we'll share things we tried at Zappos that worked, things that we tried that bombed, and, just be really transparent about that. We share a lot of our people operations and people processes and how we think about people, and much like our onboarding, we'll share how we think about core values and having them be a part of your day-to-day at the organization. And we have a couple of products that are really focused on customer service, so it's kind of like deep diving with people that have run our call center operations and how we think about that. So we don't do a ton on holacracy and self-organization, and we try to meet our customers where they're at. So for some people, it's kind of starting at the beginning with core values, and for some people, it's, we're growing really quickly. How do we make sure our culture stays with us? So it's just a broad array, and our hope is, that we can just translate out to other organizations that, in alignment with whoever they are and whatever their culture is, that work doesn't have to suck and people can be fulfilled. And that's all we want to accomplish.
Can you think of one or two organizations or folks that have come back to you and said, "You're not going to believe what a difference this made," or "Here's what we did," or if you're comfortable sharing their stories, of course.
Yeah, we definitely have companies that have come back. I'm not going to share names of companies. I will say on ZapposInsights.com, if you look at our testimonials page, that we have permission from some companies to share their company names if people wanted to check that out. But we have there's a very, very large healthcare company who has sent probably 100 people over the last couple of years to us, to our culture camp, our 3-day culture camp event. And then we've had, smaller companies who are just starting out, and it's awesome to get, feedback from them after they go back, where they'll send us pictures of, like, even, again, what might seem like a silly thing, but Holly talked about how freeing it is for an employee to bring their whole self to the job. So whereas maybe the company was, well, we must dress business casual because that's what companies do, even though we don't see customers. There's like no physical interaction, or, you can only have one picture on your desk, and, all of those kind of things. So we've had, there's one company in particular who sent us a ton. They sent a video back that they've made with their staff after 6 months, where they changed their dress code policies. They'd totally redone the office. And I'm not talking with, like, huge dollar amounts, just like, allowing people to show their personality at their desk and whatever that was. And just a lot of really complimentary feedback about how just those small shifts made such an impact on employee morale, that they're already starting to see impact in work productivity, and directly how that relates to positive customer impact.
Very cool, very cool. Well, you mentioned Culture Camp a couple of times, and I noticed there's a couple of topics in your Culture Camp. One was employee engagement and happiness, and another was engagement and metrics of culture. So can you tell us a little more about the engagement piece, because that gets a lot of buzz these days too. What is that there at Zappos, and how does it apply to organizations and metrics and things like that? What do you cover?
Yeah, and I'll let Holly jump in too, because a lot of the engagement work comes out of circles that fall under her area. But we just have a lot of programs in place where we want employees to be engaged. And an example of one might be we have a wishes program that one of our developers created this little in-house system whereby employees can put up a wish for something that they want, and it can be something serious like, we had a fire at my house and I, need clothing to help while we're, waiting for insurance stuff to settle. Or I think this was Hollie's wish one year. She likes homemade frosted Christmas cookies. And so she wished that somebody would bring her, frosted Christmas cookies and, everything in between. And it's a tool that's open to the whole employee population. And so an individual employee can grant a wish for someone, or teams will sometimes get together and grant a wish. You can choose for it to be confidential or anonymous, or you can have it not be. And it's just been a really great way, especially as we've gotten bigger, for employees to engage and interact with each other. There's no requirement to use it or do it. It's just something that people have really I think become attached to, and it's been a fun program. But it's programs like that we use, and I think I don't want to speak for Hollie, but what's interesting on the HR side is it wasn't intuitive initially to break away from the traditional HR thought that this program has to work for the entire organization, and so realizing really quickly that there is not a one-size-fits-all for most companies in terms of your employee population, especially, like, for example, if you have people that work in a call center and you have people that code all day and you have people at a photo studio, like, those are all different people and different teams, and different things are going to speak to them and resonate with them from an engagement standpoint than others. And being really open from a people HR standpoint to not being siloed in, like, we're launching these 3 programs and every department has to use them and it's going to work for all of them. So I think because of that, we've ended up with a smorgasbord of programs, some of which are used heavily by particular departments, and others, other departments use different programs. But I think that's a really important key takeaway I would give to someone looking to create engagement programs is to, one, consider who you're trying to engage, that those people have perhaps different personalities and things that are interesting to them, working with people in those actual departments to think about how programs might work or help a particular group, and then being open to having a variety for employees to choose from in how they want to interact and engage.
Yeah, and the only thing that I would add to those is one of the things similar to the Wishes program. We have another program that's highly utilized across the organization, and it's our $50 coworker bonus program. And both of them are set in not a manager coming and rewarding anybody, but peers rewarding peers. The Wishes programs are about other employees looking to grant wishes of other employees or teams, like Christa said. The $50 coworker bonus program is each employee has $50 a month that they can give to somebody as a bonus for doing something extraordinary that person feels that they did. So they have the freedom and the ability to give that to any other employee in the company as they see fit. And it's all based in the employees rewarding each other for work, not a manager or somebody else rewarding a subordinate for work. And I think that concept has created a lot for us and a lot of open doors for us. That, along with what Christa talked about, where, there is really no one-size-fits-all type thing. Like, be open to try a lot of different things. And we're very open to providing smaller programs for departments specifically to help in those realms and a lot of different things like that. So we do a lot of things like almost like a for hire type thing, where departments are like, I want to see something like this, where we help them create those things versus just looking at an overall centralized program.
Nice. I've never heard somebody talk about it like that, but it makes total sense when you think about it. Although I think some people, I just want the one size fits all, but life isn't like that.
No. And I would say the other thing that we added that I didn't mention that I think is important is a few years ago, we really organized our charity efforts, and we built that into part of our engagement programs to help employees give back to the community. And so we started a program called our Karma Adventures, where we work with local charities that allow employees to go out in team building capacities or on their own or however they see fit, but to volunteer in these different places. And we provide programs around helping that happen and bringing different charities on site to just to work in those areas, and very purposeful engagement as part of giving back to the community, and we've seen a lot of good things from that too.
Very cool, very cool. Well, okay, so in listening to you talk about things related to engagement, I hear like the business side of engagement when you're talking about, Glass Frog, and I go find the person that's accountable, or going to the technical meetings or the governance meetings. That's, engagement from a business perspective. And then I hear, the WISH program or the bonus program sounds, could be geared towards people like business help, right? But there's a lot of the personal stuff in there too, like with the wishes or with the the charity things and just some of the other things you said, like you talked about, you cried about your son in an interview. There seems to be more commingling of business and personal than has been in a traditional business setting. How much do you think that impacts the culture and or people's connections to the work and to each other?
I think it's hugely impactful. Having working, and I'll just talk personally from my point of view, as an employee of Zappos, having a company that is more than just a job, that my son is excited to talk to his friends about, that my husband talks to his friends about when he goes golfing, that, both my son and my husband want to wear Zappos branded gear, that my mom wants Zappos branded t-shirts so she could tell her friends her daughter works at Zappos. Like, having it permeate that far into your family makes it more than just a job, and that's extremely important because you spend so much of your life at a job, and to have a place that becomes a staple within who you are, like you want to be here, you want to work here, you want it to be part of your life, and you give more in that situation. And I can tell you that personally from other jobs that I have where it was just a job. And I give this place, I give Zappos 1,000 times more than I've given any other job.
Yeah, and I think Tony talks about this. Tony Shea, our CEO, talks about this a lot. But we don't think about work-life balance because we feel like if you're at the right company and the values are aligned with the company that you work at, it's just life. There doesn't need to be a divide between the two. And I'm not saying that's easy, and I'm not saying it's easy for Zappos or any company, but I think that's an ideal state to strive for.
Yep.
And it's a lot of what Holly just talked about. But if you're happy with what you're doing and you feel like you have friends and family at the company that you work at, it doesn't feel like this other part of your life. So.
Very nice, very nice. Well, just a couple more questions. One, what have been one or two pleasant surprises that you guys have had as you've been on this journey for the Zappos culture and the Holacracy or any of that piece? What have been one or two pleasant surprises for you?
A couple for me. One, I found lifelong friends here, people that whether I worked here or not, I'd still be friends with them. And the other thing is, for me personally, I went through a wellness journey since I've been here at Zappos. And so this company has supported me in losing a tremendous amount of weight and becoming a healthier person. And, and picking up a passion of running and being able to, go from a place where I couldn't walk to the end of the street to running a full marathon. Oh. And so having that as part of the place I work is like, it's awesome, and it would probably be one of the really awesome surprises that I found here at Zappos.
Holly works out all the time, by the way. All the time. Multiple marathons and half marathons in a weekend because she's crazy. I think I'll just give one example of what's been surprising to me in my 12 years at Zappos is, I mentioned I was in the recruiting, hiring space before Zappos, and I did that for 7 years at Zappos. And now I'm in Zappos Insights going on 5 years, 4.5 years, which is not at all HR recruiting. It's a business-to-business kind of sales training, external training arm. And I don't know if there's any other company who, A, would have wanted me to make that shift, or B, where I would have felt confident, even though I was terrified, and knowing that I had full support to make it work, or if it didn't work, that I would be able to move back to recruiting. And it's so just from a growth and learning standpoint, for me, this has been invaluable, and I don't know that there's a lot of places out there that would allow something like that. So we joke about it a little bit. This is, I think, probably one of Tony's great strengths is, and a testament to how he views culture as the primary important piece. And so when we have, hiring needs or positions or new initiatives that roll across the company, he does not first think of who has the skills or the background to do that. He thinks of who's really led culture at the company well and has trust across the company, and that's who he tends to go to. I know Holly has found herself leading a whole bunch of things that maybe wouldn't have fallen in the HR purview, but so it's kind of cool. And actually right now we have someone who's over our brand, essentially, who was in the call center. Yep. No formal brand marketing background, and it's been really awesome. So, yeah.
Very cool, very cool. Well, my final question for you is there any question you wish I'd asked that I hadn't asked, or something else that you'd like to share with the audience before we sign off?
I'm surprised you didn't ask us how many shoes we have.
How many shoes?
I'm okay that you didn't, but that's not an uncommon question, because the answer is probably a lot.
And mine's a lot of tennis shoes, but that's about it.
Yeah. I don't know, Holly. You were very thorough, Kelly, with your question.
No, I think you asked most of it, and I think, at least I know I added in maybe some extra that I thought I wanted people to know if it didn't answer the question correctly. So I think it was pretty much covered.
Awesome.
Yeah, I guess the only piece I might add that I don't know that came up through the course of our conversation, and it relates back to core values. I guess one major piece of advice that I would give people is we talk a lot about committing to your values and the importance of that. So beyond figuring out what they are, they really lose any sort of integrity if you're not committing to them in all aspects of your business. So it can't be a pick and choose when you want to live them, even when faced when tough decisions, and even when maybe the easier path would be to stray from your values for whatever reason. I think it's been really important, at least we've seen at Zappos, to not do that, to really stand by them, because I think it's almost impossible to go back if you cross that bridge. So that's all I would add.
And I think of the example in the book about Tony talking about the transparency that you guys have with your vendors. Mm-hmm. And there's other examples too, of course, but that one just kind of stuck in my mind about, I'm not sure what core value that one goes to, but just having that open and honest relationship, I think that was part of what it was, and it's just fascinating to hear and to read about how you guys do that. So, well, Holly and Christa, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your insights with the audience. We so appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for thinking of Zappos. We're honored to be a part of this, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, and thank you for providing great shoes, because I'm a customer, too.
Oh, yay! Thank you.
Right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by Bigger Brains, online training that won't bore you to tears. Expand the minds of your workforce at getbiggerbrains.com. Thanks for tuning in to Permission to Speak. If you want to increase collaboration and innovation in your organization, check out more resources available at speakingpractically.com or give me a call, Kelly Vandever, at 770-597-1108.